Hi, this is the help video for Access Chapter 6, Problem Solve 1, the book corner. So let's take a minute to look at the project description and read it over. So the book corner is a small local bookstore that sells to both recreational readers and the local college student population. The manager uses Access to track inventory, customers, and transactions. You've been asked to perform advanced queries that will help the management make important business decisions. To keep the file small while you work with the database, the store manager removed most of the data and left only sample data. Okay, so the first query that we're going to look at, well, first of all, I have the instructions on the left and the downloaded file on the right. I've already completed step 1, so we're on to step 2. Create a query in design view based on table shipments and table transactions that display trans ID and a new field that's calculated called days to ship. Days to ship will calculate the number of days it took to ship the items from the date purchased using the date diff function. So that sentence right there has a lot of information in it, and you really want to start to really break down these instructions, right? So I kind of highlighted what I deem is important. First of all, it's going to be called days to ship, and it calculates the number of days. So right there, that is your key of what the interval is going to be, right? Remember we talked about, you could do it by year or month or days. And this particular one, you want to return it in the number of days. And the formula is going to be using the date diff function, and it's going to try and find the difference between the date that an item was purchased and when it was shipped. And so let's go ahead and look at this shipment file first. So look, we've got a shipment date in there with the transaction ID. So in that table holds the piece of information, one of the pieces of information, right? The date it was shipped. If we look at transactions, you can see the transaction or the sale date, the date it was purchased. So we have to use both of those dates in the two different fields to complete our query. So we're going to begin by doing a create query in design, and we want shipments and transaction. And then that's all we need, so I'm going to close that up. I'm just going to open those up, bring my grid up so we can see it. We need to bring the transaction ID down. Then this calculated field, remember when we do a calculated field, it goes on to the first blank column. I always do a right click zoom, and then I'm just going to make sure my font is large enough. And it's 16, so that's good. Okay, so the first thing we do is we put the name of the field. So days to ship, colon, and then we're going to do our formula. And it tells us the function we need, date diff. After a function, you always have parentheses. So inside the parentheses, if you think back to our prepare case or in the chapter, the first thing you do is the interval, and we know we want to put a D because it says days. And if I wasn't sure, I could go look at that page that I told you to paperclip. It has all of the intervals you need, comma. Then we need the field, the first field, which would be transaction date, square bracket, and then shipment date. So all we're saying, and then I have to end my parentheses. So all we're saying here is that we're taking the difference between the ship date and the transaction date. Transaction date came first, so that's just kind of, and then we want the answer to be in the number of days. So I'm going to go ahead and do OK. I'm going to run it, and for each transaction, this is the turnaround between purchase and ship. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Oh wait, I'm going to go back because we need to sort in descending order by days to ship. Descending, run it again. So look, it shows the transactions that took the longest to ship. We're going to save this as QRY days to ship, and we're good with that. So now we can mark number 2 off here. I can find my mouse. My mouse is gone. There it is. So we're done with that, and now we're ready for step number 3. Okay, for step number 3, it's actually a little complex. And when you are looking at a complicated calculated field, what I always like to do is chunk it up into pieces, okay? So let's look at what we're supposed to do. We're going to create a query based on table inventory. We're going to display inventory ID and price, and then we're going to do a new calculated field called new price. And so here's a flag for you for how you know what you're supposed to do. It says the new price should be 30% more if the book is out of print and 10% more if not. So you have 2 paths there, right? One, they're going to increase the new price by 30%, or we're going to do it by 10%. And the condition that decides whether it's 30 or 10 is the out of print field, okay? So let's take a look at the data first. So let's look at this table inventory so we have an understanding of what we're doing. So look at this field out of print, right? It's a yes/no field. So if there's a check, that means it's out of print. If there's no check, it means it's still in print. So we need to use this field to decide if we're going to increase the new price by 30 if there's a check mark, or 10 if there's not, okay? And then, so let's just do that. And then we're going to say, moving on, we're going to round it to the nearest dollar, format it as currency. But we're going to just not do this rounding or formatting yet. We're just going to get this immediate if done, make sure it works, and then move on to the round, right? We're going to do one little piece, make sure we got it right, and then add to it. So let's create a query in Design, and all we're doing is table inventory. So from the table inventory, I'm going to pull down inventory ID and price. And then the new field is going to be a calculated field, and it's going to be called new price, colon. So I got that right here. Then, because I analyzed this statement and realized, okay, I got to do 30% or I got to do 10%. So there's 2 paths, right? And remember that if is a binary. You make a test, you come up with a true or a false. So what is our test? Well, we're going to do our immediate if, and we always do a parentheses because it's a function. And then what we're going to check is out of print, the field out of print, and we're going to say if that is no. I could have easily done yes, doesn't matter. When I said no, then that means this true path would be the 10%, right? Because it's not out of print. That's the only difference, is what is the true and what's the false. And I just happened to do no. So we're going to do if it is not out of print, we're going to take the price and we're going to multiply it by 1.1, right? Because we're increasing it by 10%. So the 1 is its current price, and the 0.1 is the increase of 10%. And then we're going to do the false. So we're going to say price. And then what do we do if it is out of print? So out of print, no is false, meaning it's got a check mark. We're going to do 30%, so 1.3. So let's run that and see if it works. Okay, so if I got a little calculator, there's my little phone. And you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to put this out of print just temporarily so I can check. So this one is not out of print. So the increase, so we have a book price of 6.69 times 1.1, 7.359. Okay, so this is probably rounding a little bit weird because this is currency. So let's look at one with the check mark. So 19.12 times 1.3 for 30%, 24.85. Perfect. It is working. So I can go back to my grid and take this out of print off of here because I know it is I gotta stop that. Okay, so that's good. So let's save it. So let's call this, we're gonna save it QRY new price, but we're not done yet, right? So we can do one thing really easily, and that's currency. So if I click on this and I go to my property sheet, format, currency, right? So now if I run it, good. But actually I probably shouldn't have done that first, but we actually want to round it and then make it currency, because currency, it'll just truncate those half pennies. So I need to zoom in here and I need to add the round function in front of each of these, the yes and the no. So I'm going to go right after the comma, but before the bracket, and I'm going to put the function called round, parentheses, because functions always need parentheses. Then I'm going to go at the end of the 1.1, and I'm going to do another comma, 0, and parentheses. Oops, I got to make that a D. So this round, and then this is the argument that tells you how many decimals to round it to. So we're taking and we're embedding that formula of price times 1.1 inside the round. We're going to do that over here. Round, parentheses. I go to the end. I do a comma, 0, right parentheses. So I always check. So I've got 1, 2, 3 left parentheses. Come back over here. 1, 2, 3. So I'm good. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'm going to run it, and now we lose all of the pennies, right? Because we're rounding it to a whole dollar because we put that 0 in there, right? Like, let me go back. Right, see that? Zeros? That's rounding it to no decimals. So now when we get it, we've got our whole dollars. Save that again, and we are done with this one. I'm going to end this movie here, and we'll start the next one on step number 4. All right, thank you.